Good evening. We're following a rapidly developing emergency out of eastern Washington state, where wildfires have torn through the Spokane area over the past 2 days, destroying hundreds of homes and forcing tens of thousands of people from their neighborhoods. Here's everything we know as of today, based on official statements from state and federal authorities. The crisis began Saturday, August 1st, when a wildfire ignited around midday in brush and grassland just west of Spokane, Washington's second largest city. Fueled by dry conditions and strong winds, that fire, now known as the Old Trails Fire, spread quickly north and east, eventually crossing the Spokane River and moving directly into residential neighborhoods in the northwest part of the city. 2 additional fires broke out in the same region around the same time, the Fairview Fire and the Autumn Lane Fire. Together, all 3 are now being referred to by emergency officials as the Spokane Complex Fire. Let's go through the numbers, because they've continued to climb as officials get a clearer picture of the damage. As of early Monday morning, Washington's Commissioner of Public Lands, Dave Upthegrove, confirmed that more than 700 homes have been destroyed, an increase from the roughly 600 structures officials had confirmed just a day earlier. Nearly 65,000 people have been forced to evacuate their homes since the fires began. Speaking to reporters, Upthegrove described the scope of the destruction as heartbreaking and emphasized that behind every image of a burned home is a family who left behind everything they own and emergency crews who have been working around the clock under extremely difficult conditions. In terms of scale, the 3 fires have burned a combined total of more than 8,000 acres, and as of the most recent update, containment remains at 0%. That number, 0% contained, is important context. It means firefighting crews have not yet been able to establish a controlled perimeter around any of the 3 blazes, which is part of why evacuation orders remain in place across such a wide area of the city and surrounding county. The good news, if there is any in a story like this one, is that, as of the most recent reports, no deaths or injuries have been confirmed in connection with these fires. Officials have been careful to note that this could change as search and damage assessment efforts continue. But for now, the human toll has been measured in lost homes and displaced families, rather than lives lost, which local officials have called fortunate, given the speed at which these fires moved through populated neighborhoods. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson declared a state of emergency on Saturday, the same day the fires broke out, and issued a statewide burn ban that will remain in effect through the end of September. The National Weather Service issued what's called a particularly dangerous situation red flag alert for eastern Washington, a designation reserved for the most extreme fire weather conditions, citing a combination of low humidity, dry vegetation, and sustained winds gusting as high as 45 miles per hour in the Spokane area. Federal and out-of-state resources have already begun arriving to assist local crews. A federal incident management team was called in from California on Saturday night to help coordinate the response. According to Commissioner Upthegrove, additional firefighting personnel and equipment have arrived from more than a dozen states, and notably from as far away as Australia, reflecting just how significant this response effort has become in a short period of time. Washington's congressional delegation has also weighed in directly. Senator Maria Cantwell, speaking alongside federal, state, and local officials at a news conference in Spokane, said the region is not out of danger yet, and cautioned that the next several days will remain challenging as crews continue working to gain control of the fires. Cantwell also noted that the Autumn Lane Fire specifically has been designated the highest priority wildfire in the entire country right now, meaning it's receiving top allocation of available federal firefighting resources as agencies balance response efforts across multiple fires burning simultaneously in the western United States this summer. On the ground, the personal toll of this disaster is coming into focus as residents are allowed back into some areas to see what remains. In the Indian Trail neighborhood, one longtime resident who had lived in her home for more than 21 years described finding it reduced to a smoking pile of rubble. Speaking to a local news affiliate, she said her family is safe, but that mementos from her children's entire upbringing were lost in the fire. In the same neighborhood, at least 6 homes on a single street were completely destroyed, while, in a detail that speaks to how unpredictable and fast-moving these fires can be, some neighboring houses on that same street were left standing, largely untouched. Another resident, who had lived in his home since 1980, told reporters that he had recently moved his elderly father into a nursing home just before the fire reached the neighborhood, calling the timing what he described as a blessing given what happened to the house afterward. Emergency shelters have been set up across the Spokane area to house displaced residents, staffed largely through the local chapter of the American Red Cross alongside community volunteers. Local schools, community centers, and fairground facilities in the region have been converted into temporary shelter space on extremely short notice, providing cots, meals, and basic supplies to families who, in many cases, left their homes with only what they could carry in the initial hours of the evacuation. For many of these families, These shelters remain the primary source of information about whether their own neighborhood and home have survived, since access to many evacuated areas remains restricted while firefighting operations continue. As for what caused these fires, that remains under investigation. Washington's Department of Natural Resources has not yet determined the origin of the Old Trails fire specifically, and officials have not released a cause for the other 2 fires in the complex as of this report. Investigators typically take time to examine a fire's point of origin, weather conditions, and any potential human or accidental factors before releasing formal findings, so it may be some time before an official cause is confirmed. In terms of what happens next for affected residents, officials say short-term disaster assistance from the Federal Emergency Management Agency is expected to be approved for Washington State. Governor Ferguson's office has said it's also working to secure longer-term federal aid, which would help cover the broader costs of rebuilding beyond immediate emergency assistance. Locally, Spokane Mayor Lisa Brown has encouraged residents who are able to help to reach out to the local Red Cross chapter, both to volunteer directly and to contribute to relief funds supporting displaced families. Weather conditions in the coming days remain a central concern for firefighting officials. August is typically the driest month of the year in Washington State, and this year's fire season is unfolding against a backdrop of widespread drought conditions across the region. While Sunday's forecast called for temperatures to stay relatively moderate, in the upper 70s, wind gusts were expected to reach as high as 45 miles per hour. Through the afternoon and evening, conditions that fire officials say work directly against containment efforts. A public information officer with the federal response team put it simply, saying crews are currently facing both the weather and the terrain working against them at the same time. Forecasters do expect winds to ease somewhat after midnight, which may offer crews a narrow window to make progress before conditions intensify again. To put the firefighting effort itself in context, crews are working with what's called 0% containment, meaning no controlled perimeter has yet been established around any of the 3 fires making up this complex. Establishing containment lines typically involves crews clearing vegetation down to bare soil in a ring around a fire's edge, sometimes reinforced with water drops from aircraft, to stop the fire's forward progress. With sustained winds pushing embers well ahead of the main fire lines, and with 3 separate fires burning simultaneously across a wide geographic area. Crews have so far been focused primarily on structure protection and evacuation support rather than full containment, a strategy that fire officials say is standard practice when a fire is actively threatening populated areas, since protecting lives and homes takes priority over establishing full containment lines in the earliest phase of a fast-moving fire. It's also worth noting that Spokane is not the only community in the region grappling with wildfire activity right now. Multiple large fires continue to burn across eastern Oregon and Washington more broadly, sending smoke into the atmosphere that has turned skies hazy and degraded. Air quality across parts of the Pacific Northwest, adding a secondary public health concern for residents even outside the immediate evacuation zones. Health officials in the region have advised residents in smoke-affected areas, including those outside the direct evacuation zones, to limit outdoor activity where possible and to keep windows closed, particularly for people with respiratory conditions, young children, and older adults. For families who have been evacuated and are trying to find information about their specific homes or neighborhoods, officials are directing residents to official Washington, state emergency management channels, and local news outlets for the most current evacuation zone maps and re-entry guidance, since conditions and access to specific neighborhoods are continuing to change day by day as the situation develops. Officials have also cautioned residents against attempting to return to evacuated areas on their own before official clearance is given, citing ongoing safety hazards including downed power lines, unstable structures, and continued fire activity in some zones. To summarize where things stand as of today, 3 wildfires collectively known as the Spokane Complex Fire have destroyed more than 700 homes and structures, forced the evacuation of nearly 65,000 people, and remain at 0% containment after burning more than 8,000 acres since Saturday. No deaths or injuries have been reported. A state of emergency and statewide burn ban are in effect. Federal and international firefighting resources have arrived to assist, and officials are warning that the next several days remain critical as crews continue working to gain control of the fires under difficult wind and drought conditions. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops. If you or someone you know has been affected by these fires, official updates are being provided through Washington State's emergency management resources, and residents wishing to assist displaced families are encouraged to contact their local American Red Cross chapter. As containment efforts continue and investigators work to determine what sparked these fires, we'll bring you updates as new information becomes available, including any changes to evacuation zones. Yes, containment progress, and the status of federal disaster assistance for affected families. This remains an active, evolving situation, and residents in the greater Spokane area are urged to continue monitoring official channels for the latest guidance rather than relying on secondhand reports, given how quickly conditions have changed since Saturday.